Hello, everyone. I'm Mr.Graveveil. I want to tell you a horror story. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and get ready for a story you've never heard before. After the divorce, I didn't pack much. Just essentials, a few books, and the coffee mug I'd had since college. The house I found was nothing special. A 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood outside Richmond. Cheap rent, wide windows, dusty floorboards that complained under every step. It wasn't home, not really, but it was far from everything that used to be mine. I spent the first few nights in silence. No TV, no music. I wanted to hear the house breathe, to know if it had any quirks, like old pipes or creaky doors. It did, but it was the kind of silence that felt padded, like something pressing gently on the walls. Not uncomfortable. Not yet. The windows in the living room were large, too large, maybe. At night, even with the curtains drawn, light from the street lamps cast weird shadows across the ceiling. I started making a habit of closing them just before bed. The curtains were old and thin, came with the place. They didn't block much. On the third night, I was brushing my teeth when I noticed something off. Through the small gap where the curtain didn't quite meet the edge of the window frame, I saw a shape, not moving, just there. Across the street, the house was dark. No porch light, no cars. Just one window faintly lit by the ambient glow outside, and in front of it, a silhouette. Shoulders. A head. It wasn't moving. Like someone was standing just behind their own curtain, staring at mine. I stood there, toothbrush frozen in hand, staring at that window. No flicker, no shift, not even a blink. I told myself it was a coat rack or some kind of furniture casting a weird shadow. But I kept staring. 5 minutes passed, maybe 10. Then I laughed, quietly, nervously. I closed the curtain fully and finished brushing. My mind was playing tricks. New environment, new routines, right? But when I went to bed, I couldn't help but wonder, why would someone just stand there at that hour in total darkness? And more than that, why did it feel like they were waiting? The next night, I didn't look out the window. I kept myself busy, emails, laundry, an old movie playing low in the background. But when midnight rolled around, my feet moved toward the living room, almost on their own. I paused near the window. I didn't want to look. I told myself I wouldn't, but I did. Same house, same window, same shadow, unmoving. I stared harder this time, trying to pick out details. No lights inside, just the glow from the street lamp catching the edge of the glass. The shape was still there, a shoulder slightly slumped, the faint curve of a head, like someone just standing there, facing me. Not watching TV, not reading, just standing. The street was dead quiet. No cars, no dogs. Just that silence that presses against your eardrums when it's too late for anything normal to be happening. I pulled my curtain closed, slower this time. There was something about how still the shape was that made it feel less human. Not in the sense of a monster, but like it didn't care that it was being seen. The next day, I tried not to think about it. I worked from home, took a walk, tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light or some weird part of the architecture. But that night, it was there again. And again. It became a pattern, a quiet dread that settled in every evening. I started checking earlier, hoping the shadow wouldn't be there. It always was. One afternoon, a delivery guy dropped off a package. I asked him, casually, if he ever delivered across the street. He glanced over, then shook his head. That place? Pretty sure it's empty. For sale sign's been up for months. I asked him if he'd ever seen anyone in the window. He frowned. No, man. That place is dead. You new around here? I nodded. He looked at the house once more, then left quickly. I didn't blame him. That night, I didn't look at all. I closed the curtains before dark and stayed in my bedroom. But even there, in the quiet, I thought I heard something. A soft creak, like old wood under shifting weight. Not from my house, from the one next door. I started documenting it. Each night, I'd glance at the window, take a quick photo with my phone, then shut the curtain tight. I didn't know what I was hoping to prove. Maybe that it wasn't real, or maybe that it was. In the photos, the shadow was always faint, just an outline, no features, no movement. But something about the consistency made my chest tighten. It wasn't changing. It wasn't leaving. And then, on a Wednesday night, it moved. It was barely a shift, just a slow fade backward, like someone taking one step away from the curtain. I was sure I imagined it. I blinked hard, stared at the glass. Nothing. Stillness again. But the next night, it was closer. Not by much. Just a slight difference in the height of the shoulder. A tilt in the head. The kind of thing you wouldn't notice unless you'd been staring at it every night, like I had. I left the curtain half open on purpose, needing to know. The living room stayed dark. I turned off all the lights and sat in the armchair, watching the house across the street. Around 1:14 a.m., the light inside the house flickered on, just for a second. One flash, enough to light the outline of the window from within, and then darkness again. The figure was gone. My mouth went dry. I stood slowly, moved toward the window, leaned closer to the glass. The lights in my living room turned off. I froze, heart hammering. My hand was nowhere near the switch. I backed away, stumbling into the coffee table. The room stayed dark. I didn't hear a sound, but I felt something. The silence had changed, the way it does when someone is too close. I turned the lights back on, all of them, every room. I didn't care if it looked paranoid. I needed light, clarity, distance from whatever that was. The next morning, I called the real estate company listed on the for sale sign across the street. A tired woman answered. When I asked about the property, she sighed. No one's lived there for almost a year, she said, and we don't have a key anymore. Bank repossession. It's locked up. Locked? I asked. You're sure? Positive. No one should be inside, but someone was. I knew it, and now I wasn't sure they were staying on their side anymore. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. The living room felt safer. More windows, more light, more distance from the wall that faced the house next door. I kept the curtains closed with clips, doubled up with a blanket just in case. But even that didn't stop the feeling. Not of being watched. That was earlier. This was different. This was being expected. I started hearing things inside the house. Light scraping sounds, faint clicks like something being reset. Once, I woke up on the couch with my front door unlocked, even though I remembered locking it. Even though I double-checked 3 times. One night, I noticed something strange in the mirror at the end of the hallway. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, door open as usual. From where I stood, I could see the mirror on the far wall, just enough to catch the hallway behind me. And in that reflection, I saw the silhouette again. Only this time, it wasn't in the window. It was behind me. I spun around so fast I knocked over the toothbrush holder. Nothing. The hallway was empty, quiet, still. I walked slowly toward the mirror, trying not to breathe too loud. The figure wasn't there anymore, but the feeling remained, like the image had burned into the glass itself, like it didn't need light anymore. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't tell anyone. I just got in the car and drove. I stayed in a motel 2 towns over for a few days. Tried to calm down, tried to sleep. Then 3 nights later, I moved into a temporary apartment on the other side of the city. Different layout, no big windows, no view of anyone else's house. I told myself it was over. But that first night, while brushing my teeth again, I looked at the bathroom mirror and paused. In the reflection, just past my shoulder, the edge of the bedroom window was visible. And behind it, barely there, just a curve of darkness pressed against the glass. A silhouette. This time, it was facing away from me. I deliver packages for a gig app. Nights are quieter, tips are better, and I don't have to deal with people much, which I like. Most of the neighborhoods I cover are quiet, especially the older ones with tidy lawns and motion-activated porch lights. You start to remember faces after a while. You don't know names, but you know who smiles, who waves, who never opens the door. There was this guy, Mr. Hanley, lived near the end of Willow Avenue. Small gray house with wind chimes that never stopped moving, even on still nights. I'd seen him a few times. Old, tall, walked like his knees hurt, always wore a cardigan. He didn't talk much, just nodded or raised a hand. But he was harmless, familiar. One evening, just before sunset, I had a delivery flagged for a house a few doors down from his. Nobody answered. I knocked twice, waited the required 3 minutes. Nothing. The app gave me options. Leave it on the porch, take it back, or leave with a neighbor. That's what made me think of Mr. Hanley. He'd taken deliveries before. I walked over, package in hand. Knocked. He opened the door after a few seconds. No smile, just that same silent nod. "Hey," I said, holding up the box. "Your neighbor wasn't home. Mind holding this for them?" He stared at the package, then at me. No expression. Then, slowly, he opened the screen door and held out his hands. His fingers were cold when they brushed mine. Colder than I expected. He didn't say a word. Just turned, walked back inside, and shut the door behind him. I stood there a second longer than I needed to. Something about the way he moved felt off. Slower. Heavy, like every step cost him something. But I shrugged it off. People get tired. People get old. I marked the package as left with neighbor in the app and finished my route. Later that night, I thought about the way his house looked when the door opened. Too dark inside for that time of day. And those wind chimes. They hadn't made a sound. I didn't think much of it until the next evening when I passed by again. And the package was still sitting at his door. Exactly where I'd left it. The next day, I had a few more stops in the same area. I wasn't even thinking about it, honestly, until I turned onto Willow Avenue again. That's when I saw it. The package. Same spot, propped against Mr. Hanley's door, untouched. It hadn't moved an inch. Same angle. Same crease in the cardboard. No signs of weather damage or tampering, like no one had even looked at it. I frowned. Maybe he forgot? Maybe he brought it in and then put it back out? That didn't make sense, but I didn't stop. I had a schedule to keep, but the image stayed in my head the rest of the day. That box sitting there, quiet, unclaimed. That night, the app pinged me with a notification. Delivery issue, package marked as not received. I opened the order history. It was the same package I'd left with Mr. Hanley. I felt uneasy. Technically, I wasn't supposed to take it back unless I'd chosen return to sender. But the customer had reported it missing, meaning it could come back on me. So I decided to swing by again after my shift, just to be sure. The house was dark. No porch light. No movement behind the windows. The package was gone. I walked up the steps anyway and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again louder. Still nothing. A voice called from next door. A man with salt and pepper hair, sweeping leaves from his driveway. "Looking for Hanley?" "Yeah," I said. "I dropped something off for him yesterday." The man lowered his broom. "Oh, you didn't hear?" I shook my head. He leaned on the handle. "He passed away. Last week. Heart, I think. Quiet. No family around here." I stared at him. "Last week?" "Yeah. Real quiet guy. Lived here forever. Real shame." I looked back at the house. The windows were still dark, the curtains drawn. Wind chimes hung motionless under a perfectly still sky. "Are you sure?" I asked. The man nodded. "Positive. There was an ambulance and everything." I didn't say anything else. Just thanked him and got back in my van. I sat there for a long time before driving off. The box I'd delivered, I'd handed it to someone. I remember the feeling of the cardboard brushing my palm, the cold fingers, the door opening, the weight of the moment. If Mr. Hanley had died a week ago, who opened the door? Back home, I couldn't stop replaying it. The porch, the door, his face, his hands, the cold. I didn't imagine that. I logged into the app's backend using a feature most drivers don't know about. It lets you download your route history and timestamp deliveries. I pulled up the log for Willow Avenue. It showed exactly what I remembered. Delivery completed, neighbor received package, timestamped 6:37 p.m. But there was something odd. The GPS trail didn't end at the house. It stopped a few feet before the porch, like I never stepped all the way up. The photo I usually take for proof? Missing. Just the text, left with neighbor. That didn't make sense. I always snap a photo. Always. Then I remembered my van has a dash cam that auto-records whenever the engine is on. I checked the footage from that night. There I was, walking up the driveway, the porch in view, my hand holding the box. But as I got to the door, there was no one there. No movement. No figure. No one opening the screen door. On the footage, I was standing alone, extending the package into empty space. Then I lowered my hand, stepped back, and stood still for a few seconds, like I was listening. Then I turned and walked away. I felt a chill crawl up my back. I watched the footage again. Same thing, just me, talking to someone who wasn't there. I looked at my face in the video. I looked calm, focused, like I saw something, like I believed something was there. I opened the audio. Just static, wind, faint sounds from the street. No voice. No door creak. No footsteps. I checked the footage from my rear camera, the one that would have caught the porch behind me after I left. Nothing. No one came to get the package. No hand reaching for the box. No door opening. And yet, the next day, the package was gone. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, trying to remember the exact details. The moment he took the box, the way his fingers felt, cold and dry, like something not quite alive. I wasn't imagining it. I couldn't be, but the video said otherwise. And I was starting to think that maybe whatever opened that door didn't need to show up on camera. I couldn't let it go. The footage didn't make sense, but neither did the feeling in my gut, that absolute certainty that I had handed the box to someone, something. I emailed the support team from the app under the pretense of disputing the delivery issue. They sent me the formal record, delivery ID, timestamp, GPS location, and at the bottom, the receiver's signature. I opened the attachment, expecting to see something generic, maybe even just a scribble. But it wasn't a scribble. It was my name, signed in full. Clean, clear, like I'd signed for my own delivery. I stared at it, my mouth dry. I hadn't touched that screen. I hadn't signed anything. I reopened the tracking logs, looked deeper. That's when I saw it. The same package, same tracking number, same weight, same destination, had been scanned twice that week. 2 completed deliveries, 2 timestamps. The first matched the evening I handed it off at Hanley's house. The second, 2 nights later, different location, my address. I felt something shift in my chest, like all the air had left the room. I checked my porch camera, pulled up the date and time. The footage had a gap, a clean cut between 1:03 and 1:09 a.m., just static. I didn't even think. I threw on shoes, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped outside. There was nothing on the porch. But as I turned to go back inside, I saw it, wedged between the railing and the wall, nearly hidden by shadow. A small brown package. Same shape, same barcode. My name on the label. Hands trembling, I picked it up. It was warm, like it had been held recently. I took it inside, placed it on the kitchen table, and stared at it. No sound, no ticking, no markings besides the label. I didn't open it. I just sat with it, feeling its presence press into the room like humidity. I thought of Hamley's cold fingers, the missing footage, the signature in my name. It's still on the table now. I moved it once, just to vacuum, and it slid back overnight. Same spot, perfectly aligned with the grain of the wood. And here's the part I haven't told anyone. I checked the app's delivery dashboard again this morning. There's a third delivery. It's scheduled for tomorrow. Same item, same tracking number, same recipient, me. I walk dogs at night. People always ask if it's dangerous, but honestly, it's the only time I feel like I can breathe. No kids yelling, no cars honking, no neighbors wanting to chat. Just me, the leash, and whatever dog I've been assigned that week. This week, it was Max, a 12-year-old golden retriever with stiff hips and cloudy eyes. Sweet dog, not fast. Just wanted to sniff the same trees every night and move at his own pace. I respected that. We'd do the same route. Out of the client's house around 11:30 p.m., down 2 blocks, cut through the quiet park trail, and back by midnight. Same pattern every time. The first night, I didn't notice anything weird. But the second night, halfway through the trail, Max stopped. He never did that. Not mid-walk. I thought maybe he was tired, but when I looked down, he was staring at something, not barking, just alert, focused. I followed his gaze and saw nothing, just the path curving around a tree. Then I saw the footprints. They weren't Max's. Too small, too deep in the mud, like a barefoot kid had stepped there, but with strange spacing, not a normal walking stride. Almost like someone hopping, 1 foot at a time. I looked around. Silence. Total stillness. No wind, no crickets. Max wouldn't move for a solid minute. Then he let out a low grunt and pulled slightly away, like he didn't want to go forward. I gave in. We looped around the longer way, avoiding that part of the trail. Back at the house, I checked his paws. Clean. So those prints weren't his. I told myself it was nothing, maybe old marks from earlier in the day. But the next night, they were back. Same spot, same direction. Only this time, there were more of them, crisscrossing in a circle, like whoever left them had been pacing. Still barefoot, still too small. Max didn't just stop this time. He growled. A sound I didn't think that old dog had in him. I turned on my flashlight and scanned the trees. Nothing moved, but something felt off, like the air had weight, like we weren't alone. We took the long way home again. That night, I didn't sleep well, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd been watched. Not by someone hidden, by someone waiting. The third night, I left a little earlier, around 11:10. The air felt heavier than usual, like it hadn't moved all day. Max was already near the door when I arrived, tail wagging slow, like he wasn't quite sure if he wanted to go. We took the usual route. I told myself we'd skip the trail entirely, just stick to sidewalks and streetlights, play it safe. But a few blocks in, Max froze again. This time, not on the trail. Just near the corner of an empty lot, next to an old rusted playground that hadn't been touched in years. He bristled. That's the only way I can describe it. His fur stood up along his spine like he was preparing for something. I followed his eyes. There was nothing. At first. Then I saw it. Two small, low reflections. Like the glint you get when light hits an animal's eyes, but too far apart, too still. They were at ground level, under the swing set, not blinking, just there. I thought maybe it was a raccoon or a stray cat, but the more I looked, the less that made sense. The shape wasn't right. Too upright, too still. I shifted slightly, and the reflections shifted too, like they were turning with me. Max let out a deep, shaking whine. That did it. We turned back early. Back at the house, I tried to rationalize. Eyeshine from a small animal. Trick of light. A toy maybe, something metallic. But something was off. I'd walked past that lot before, plenty of times, and never seen anything that looked like that. The next night, the eyes weren't under the swing. They were behind the fence of a yard halfway down the block. Lower this time, closer to the ground, still facing me. Max didn't growl. He didn't even stop. He just walked faster, like he'd already seen them. That became the pattern. Each night, the reflections showed up somewhere new. Not chasing, not approaching, just appearing. Always at the edge of visibility. Always just still enough to question if they were really there. Until the sixth night. That night, they were closer. In front of a bush at the base of the driveway. No fence, no cover. Just there, watching. That was the first night Max barked. Short, sharp, not aggressive, more like a warning. I didn't even look back. We walked fast. I didn't run, but I wanted to. By the seventh night, Max refused to leave the house. He stood near the door, tail tucked, eyes wide, paws locked like he'd forgotten how to walk. I coaxed him with a leash, treats, even sat on the floor next to him. Nothing worked. He wouldn't budge. Eventually, I lifted him gently, carried him outside to the front yard, set him down on the walkway. He trembled all over, not just scared, but tense, hyper-aware. We didn't go far, just around the block. Every sound made him flinch. A distant car door, a leaf scraping across the pavement. It was like something had reversed in him, like he didn't believe the outside was safe anymore. That night, I decided to take a different route. No trail, no lot, no back streets. Just the well-lit blocks of the main road. We made it 3 blocks before he stopped cold again. This time, he wasn't looking into the dark. He was staring at a front yard fence, at something small hanging from one of the metal posts. It was a keychain. Mine. A stupid rubber keychain shaped like a donut. I'd had it for years, never lost it. It had been on my apartment key earlier that day. I walked up slowly. Max stayed back. The keychain was looped around the post, like someone had placed it there deliberately. Not dropped, not tossed, arranged. I checked my pockets. My keys were there, but the keychain was gone. It made no sense. I hadn't noticed it missing. I didn't even know it could come off that easily. I looked around. The street was quiet. Not a soul in sight. No movement in any windows. Nothing but warm porch lights and the buzz of a street lamp. I took the keychain, clipped it back on, and we turned around. Back at the house, I inspected the leash, the collar, everything in my bag. Nothing else missing. But when I stepped inside to wash Max's paws, something hit me. The curtains were closed, but they'd been open when we left. That client always left them open for airflow. Nothing was gone. No sign of forced entry. But the blanket on the couch was folded differently. A shoe near the door had shifted an inch to the left. just enough to notice. Not enough to prove. I didn't tell the client. I just finished my shift and decided it was the last night I'd walk Max. I didn't tell the client I wouldn't come back. I just said Max seemed stressed and might need a break from the night walks. They understood. Said they'd switch to daytime for a while. But I couldn't stop thinking about that keychain. So on my last night, I brought something with me. A micro camera, the kind you clip to a dog collar. Cheap, wide angle, motion activated, just for peace of mind. I clipped it to Max's collar as gently as I could. He didn't flinch, just looked up at me with those foggy eyes. Like he understood this wasn't just another walk. We didn't go far. One loop around the neighborhood, no trails. Max didn't bark, didn't stop, just walked like he wanted it to be over. Back at the house, I removed the camera and said goodbye for the last time. When I got home, I plugged the device in. The footage started normally. Quiet streets, Max's snout bouncing in frame. It was steady for the first few minutes. Then came the moment I didn't notice during the walk. A pause in his movement. Max's body stiffens. The camera tilts slightly to one side as he turns his head. And in the distance, just past the edge of a hedge, something moves. It's hard to describe. Not a person, not a dog. Something on all fours, but not like any animal I've ever seen. Long limbs, not quite right. Moving in pulses, not steps. More like a crawling sway. It keeps its distance, but it follows. Every time Max glances over his shoulder, the shape is there. Always the same distance. Always just far enough to remain unclear. The footage ends with Max stopping at the doorstep. And one final frame, the figure stepping just out of sight behind a tree. I sat for a long time, staring at the screen. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't chasing. It wasn't hiding. It was staying exactly where it needed to be. Later that night, I closed every curtain in my apartment, double-locked the doors. But just after midnight, I peeked through the blinds. At the far end of the street, beneath the glow of the lamppost, something moved. It wasn't walking. It was crouched, watching, and the eyes reflecting in the dark were too low to belong to anything standing. We'd only been in the house 3 days. It was one of those quick rental moves, short notice, tight budget, smaller town. My partner and I didn't mind. We needed quiet, stability. The neighborhood felt like that kind of place. Trimmed hedges, faded flags on porches, polite nods from neighbors walking dogs. The house itself was old, but sturdy. One floor, big front window, tiny patch of lawn that didn't ask for much. The first 2 days passed without anything notable. We unpacked, set up the Wi-Fi, figured out which cabinet the glasses should go in. It was peaceful in that dull, soft way. Then came the note. It was lying on the welcome mat when we stepped outside on the third morning. Plain white paper, folded once. No envelope. I figured it was a flyer, or maybe something from the landlord. But when I opened it, there was just one sentence, handwritten in all caps. You are being watched. No name. No contact. No explanation. We both just stared at it. I laughed, awkwardly. Maybe someone's trying to scare the new neighbors? My partner didn't laugh. They folded the note again, tossed it in the trash under the kitchen sink. We didn't talk about it much after that. Just something weird. Maybe a prank. But that night, I noticed we kept the curtains closed a little earlier. The next morning, there was nothing on the porch. The morning after that, another note. Same size, same handwriting. We know what you did. I stared at the words longer this time. We hadn't done anything. Not here. Not ever. We asked the neighbor across the street if they'd seen anything strange. He just smiled, shook his head, said the area was quiet as it gets. I didn't believe him. The third note came 2 days later, then a fourth the day after that. Each time, the message changed. And each time, it got sharper, not violent, not explicit, but enough to tighten something in your chest. You shouldn't have moved here. Your windows don't block everything. That was the one that made my partner start sleeping facing the wall. I bought a motion sensor light, installed a security camera by the front door. We didn't get alerts. We didn't see anything. But the notes kept coming. It didn't stop. The notes never came during the day. We'd wake up, open the door, and there it was. Always folded the same way. Always clean, like it hadn't touched dirt or dew. As if someone had placed it gently, precisely. I changed the camera angle, re-watched the feed 3 times. Nothing. No shadows, no figure approaching. Just an empty porch. Then suddenly, there it is. The note. Like it blinked into existence. They started getting more specific. You take your coffee black, but you stir it anyway. Your bedroom door squeaks at 2:12. You talk in your sleep. We never posted anything online. Never told anyone about our routine. These weren't guesses. They were observations. I started sleeping worse. My partner barely slept at all. They thought it was someone from work, someone they'd crossed who followed us here. Maybe even followed us through the move. The idea made sense. And that's what scared me most. I stopped looking through the peephole at night. I didn't want to know what was on the other side. One evening, I waited until after midnight and opened the door without warning. Nothing. No wind. No footsteps. Just quiet. But in the morning, another note. Nice try. We talked about breaking the lease. My partner started looking at listings in other towns. We'd only just moved in, but the air in the house was already different. Heavy, like we weren't allowed to relax. I taped paper over the mail slot, stuffed towels at the base of the doors. I even checked the attic. Nothing up there but dust and the brittle silence of wood too old to complain anymore. Still, the notes kept coming. We tried keeping the porch light on all night, then off. We tried not reacting, not mentioning it at breakfast. We even left a note of our own once. Who are you? It was gone the next morning, replaced with one that read, You already know. That was the moment I realized something. Whoever was doing this, it wasn't just about fear. It was about presence, control, making us feel like we'd brought this on ourselves. And maybe, in some way, we had. We stopped looking for notes outside, but they didn't stop. Because one day, we found one inside. It was on the nightstand, right beside the glass of water I always set down before bed, folded the same way. No dirt, no fingerprints. You said you wanted to leave. I hadn't said it out loud, not that night. Not to anyone but my partner, behind a closed door, whispering because the walls felt too thin. That was when they broke. They packed a bag, said they'd stay with a cousin across town, just for a few days. I didn't argue. We were unraveling at different speeds, and I could feel myself catching up. I stayed behind, told myself I'd figure it out, that I'd get proof. I set up new cameras, inside this time. One in the kitchen, one in the hallway, one facing the front door. I locked every window, screwed shut the attic access. I even bought a baby monitor for our bedroom, the kind that picks up every breath. That night, nothing happened. No alert, no noise. But in the morning, there was a note. It was under my pillow. You talk less when you're alone. I hadn't moved all night. I checked the footage. Nothing, just me, tossing, turning. I checked the hallway camera, frame by frame. In one moment, the door to the bedroom is closed. In the next, still closed. but the angle changes slightly, like the lens had been touched. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It didn't feel like ours. It felt borrowed, and someone wanted it back. Small things began shifting. A fork in the wrong drawer. The toothpaste squeezed from the middle. A chair pulled slightly away from the table. Nothing was gone. Nothing stolen. Just rearranged. Each time, I found a new note. You never notice right away. You're easier to read when you're tired. They weren't threats. They were commentary. And that was worse. I started talking out loud, saying things like, "I see you," or "This isn't working." Not because I expected a response, but because silence made me feel hunted. And I wasn't sure anymore if I was being watched or studied. We decided to leave. Not just the house, the city. My partner came back for one night so we could pack together. We didn't talk much. Just folded clothes, boxed dishes, avoided eye contact. Neither of us said what we were both thinking, that leaving might not matter. Still, we needed the illusion of control. We planned to leave before sunrise. Safer that way. Less time in the house when it was dark. That night, I stayed up. My partner slept a few hours, but I couldn't. I sat on the couch with every light on, listening, waiting. The camera feeds blinked silently on my laptop. Nothing moved. Until 4:17 a.m., that's when I heard it. Not a knock, not a creak. Just the faintest shift of weight on wood, like someone placing something on the porch. I got up slowly. The front door had a small window at the top, but I didn't look through it. I just opened it. The air outside was cold and still. No figure, no footsteps, just the breeze. And a piece of paper, still trembling slightly in the wind, folded like always. This time, the handwriting was different. Still all caps, still neat. But the message was longer. The problem was never the house. That was it. I didn't take it inside. I left it on the porch, closed the door, and locked every bolt we had. We finished packing in silence. No music, no talking. Just the sound of cardboard folding and tape tearing. By 6:30, the car was full. We left without looking back. Hours later, after we checked into a roadside motel 2 counties over, I opened my suitcase to grab a change of clothes, and there it was. Another note, tucked inside one of my socks, folded the same as always. The paper smelled faintly like our kitchen, like our house. I opened it slowly, my hands shaking. Coming back won't help. I didn't show my partner. I just flushed it down the motel toilet and turned on the TV. We haven't talked about it since. But every so often, I find myself checking the edges of drawers, under pillows, between pages of books I haven't opened in years. Not because I'm afraid the notes will return, but because a part of me is terrified they never stopped. I didn't know much about the guy who moved in 2 houses down. His name was Kevin, maybe mid-30s, lived alone. The kind of person who waves from a distance, but doesn't really invite conversation. So I was surprised when he knocked on my door one Saturday morning, holding an Allen wrench set and a box labeled TV stand, some assembly required. Said he'd just moved in and was overwhelmed. Could use a second pair of hands. Offered beer and pizza in exchange. I didn't have plans. Figured, why not? His place looked freshly painted, still half in boxes. The living room was a mess of parts and open tools. But what stood out was the hallway. Long, narrow, too dark for how many windows the house had. Built weird, Kevin said when he saw me glance down it. Feels longer than it should be, right? I nodded. It did. We got to work. He talked a little, said the house was a rental, found it online, hadn't met the landlord in person. Said everything was handled over email. Cheap rent, too good to pass up. During a break, I asked how many bedrooms it had. 2, he said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. Master and a guest, plus a weird little storage room at the end of the hall. I must have looked confused because he added, "Yeah, I thought it was a closet, but the layout's funky." He pulled open a drawer and handed me a folded floor plan. One of those digital printouts with labels and room dimensions. It showed 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, kitchen, living room, but no storage room. I asked, "You mean this here?" and pointed at the end of the hall. He nodded. "Yeah, that's the one. Shouldn't be there, apparently." I walked over to look myself. Sure enough, at the end of the hallway, there was a door. Plain white, no markings, same handle as the others. But the floor plan had a solid wall there. "I just figured the builder took liberties," Kevin said behind me. "Didn't bother checking." I touched the doorknob. Cool to the touch. Locked. He shrugged. "Didn't come with a key. I thought it was just sealed off or something." I didn't say anything, but something about it bothered me. Not that the door existed, but that it looked used, like someone had touched it recently. I didn't say anything at the time, but I kept thinking about that door. It was the kind of detail that gets stuck in your head for no good reason. I even pulled up satellite images of the neighborhood later that night, trying to make sense of the layout. From above, Kevin's house looked normal, symmetrical, no odd extensions, no sign of an extra room. Still, there was a door. He called me a few days later, asked if I could help him finish assembling a shelving unit. I agreed, mostly because I wanted an excuse to look again. The second time in his house, I noticed the hallway even more. It didn't just feel long, it felt stretched. The walls bowed inward slightly, like the hallway was under pressure, or pulled, and the door was still there. Same clean white paint, same scuffed doorknob. But this time, when I walked past it, I felt it. Air, cold, faint, like someone had opened a freezer behind the wall. And that wasn't the only thing. There was sound, not loud, just soft, repetitive, like a slow scratching, or maybe breathing through fabric. Kevin didn't mention it. Kept his back to the door while he worked. Talked about work stuff, his broken coffee maker, the usual distractions. I waited until he left the room to look closer. The door frame had tiny marks around the edges, scratches, like someone had tried to pry it open at some point. The doorknob turned a few degrees when I tested it, not enough to open, but not completely locked either. When Kevin came back, I casually asked, "You ever tried to open it?" He hesitated. "Nah, figured it was sealed for a reason." "Doesn't bother you?" He shrugged too fast. Every place has weird corners, right? Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the feel of that hallway stuck with me, like standing too close to a strong magnet, or hearing a sound just below your range. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in mistakes, architectural ones, human ones. And that door didn't feel like a mystery. It felt like an error, like something that got built by accident, and someone tried to cover it up. And whatever was behind it hadn't left. Kevin finally agreed to open it. It took 2 more visits, a lot of subtle prodding, and one particularly bad night where he called me past midnight, said he'd been hearing things, taps, breathing, a low vibration coming from the wall. I brought over a pry bar and a flashlight. He looked pale, tired, said he hadn't slept in 2 nights. The door didn't resist much. The screws were old, some barely anchored. It felt like it wanted to open. The moment it cracked, the air shifted. Not cold, not anymore. Just stale. Like whatever was in there hadn't moved in years. The smell was metallic and sour, like old blood and paint. We stepped inside. It wasn't big, maybe 10 feet across, 12 deep. No windows, no fixtures. The walls were partially painted a dull gray, like someone had started and stopped halfway. There were scrape marks on the floor, curved patterns like furniture had been dragged around again and again. But there was nothing inside now, except paper, hundreds of torn pieces. Stuffed in a corner, some yellowed, others fresh. Most had handwriting, messy, frantic. Some in Sharpie, others in pencil. Scattered across them were names, first names only. Some were crossed out, some were repeated, and times. 1:47 a.m., 3:03, 2:26. Always between midnight and 4. What the hell is this? Kevin whispered. I didn't answer, because one of the scraps had my name on it. Not my full name, just my first, but spelled exactly how I spell it, which isn't common. Beneath it, 1:52 a.m. Kevin found one with his name too. That's when he started shaking. We collected a few pieces and backed out slowly. Closed the door. Didn't lock it. Didn't touch it again. Later that night, I laid the scraps out on my kitchen table. Counted 5 with my name. Each one had a different time. Some matched nights I'd visited. Others didn't. I tried calling Kevin, but he didn't pick up. The next morning, the door in his hallway was covered with a dresser. Heavy, deliberately wedged. I didn't push him, but I did notice something as I left. The hallway looked shorter again, like the room was gone, but the wall still breathed. Kevin stopped answering my texts. The dresser stayed in front of the door for a week, maybe more. I'd walk past his house in the evening, lights off, blinds down. No sign of movement, but I always felt like someone was watching from inside, not out of curiosity, but to make sure I stayed away. Eventually, I let myself in. He had given me a spare key early on, during that first week of boxes and beer. I told myself I was checking on him, just in case. The house was silent, dustier than before. A mug in the sink with mold around the rim. Shoes by the door, exactly aligned. The hallway felt longer again. The dresser was gone. The door exposed. I stood there for a long time before opening it. No sound, no breathing, just stillness. Inside, the air was warmer now. The paint looked fresher somehow, like someone had started repainting it gray again. But there was something new on the floor. A small handheld voice recorder. One of those cheap black ones with a red button. It was already on. The little red light blinked. I picked it up and hit play. Static. Then, my voice. From weeks ago. Talking to Kevin. Joking about pizza. Laughing. But the recording didn't stop. It kept going. Even after the moment I clearly remembered leaving. My voice kept talking. Rambling. Asking questions Kevin never answered. Until finally it said, "Can you hear it now?" Then silence. Then another voice. Not mine. Not Kevin's. It whispered something I still haven't been able to repeat. I dropped the recorder. As I bent to pick it up, I noticed something under the scraps of paper. Something flat and beige. A floor plan. Same as before. But now there were handwritten markings. Red pens circling the room. Notes in the margin. Do not open and not safe alone. One note just said, "Nitrogen monoxide exit," in all caps. I left everything and walked out. As I reached the sidewalk, I heard the door creak shut behind me. I never touched it. Kevin moved out the next week. Or maybe he didn't. No one saw a truck. The house went dark and stayed that way. A for sale sign went up last month. I still walk past it sometimes. Just once I stopped. And I swear, from the sidewalk, I heard it again. My voice. Saying something I don't remember saying. And then a second voice from deeper inside, repeating it back to me. The first time I heard it, I thought it was plumbing. It was soft. 3 short knocks. Quick, like someone tapping their knuckles without much force. I was half asleep, so it barely registered. Just background noise. The kind of thing you forget about in the morning. But the second night, it happened again. 3 knocks, same rhythm, same time. I glanced at the digital clock on my nightstand. 2:47 a.m. This time, I sat up. My apartment was quiet. No music, no traffic. Just the creaking of the old building settling into its bones. I got out of bed, padded to the front door, and looked through the peephole. Empty hallway. The next morning, I checked with my upstairs neighbor. They hadn't heard anything. Said it was probably someone slamming a cabinet or the elevator thudding shut. Maybe I was just jumpy. The move, the new job, the unfamiliar noises of a building I didn't know yet. I wanted to believe that. But on the third night, the knocking woke me straight out of sleep. 3 quick knocks. 2:47 a.m. I got to the door faster this time. Quiet, deliberate. Looked through the peephole again. Nothing. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. I didn't open it. Just waited, heart tapping its own nervous rhythm. The hallway stayed still. No footsteps, no voices. Just me, breathing hard in the dark. After a few minutes, I went back to bed. But I didn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between the creaks, waiting for something else. Nothing came. The next day, I bought a doorbell camera. Not because I was scared, because I wanted an explanation. I mounted it carefully, checked the Wi-Fi signal, set it to record everything between 2:30 and 3 a.m. That night, I went to bed early, made sure every lock was turned, closed the blinds, left a light on in the kitchen. The knocks came again. I was ready. I waited until they stopped. Then I ran to the door, yanked it open. The hallway was empty. Just stale air and humming fluorescent lights. I checked the footage right after, but there was nothing. The video cut to static at exactly 2:46 and resumed at 2:49. A perfect blackout. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about sound. It was about timing. After the blackout, I became obsessed. Every night, I stayed up. Lights off, phone on silent, eyes locked on the door. And every night, it came. 3 soft knocks. Always at 2:47. Always gone by the time I reached the peephole. Sometimes I'd open the door instantly, thinking I could catch whoever it was. But the hallway never changed. Same still air, same artificial lighting. No sounds, no echoing footsteps. Just the pressure of being watched and not being able to prove it. I even left a note taped to the door. If this is a joke, it's not funny. Please stop. It was gone the next morning. No reply. No acknowledgement. Just gone. By the end of the week, I wasn't sleeping. I barely left the apartment. I reinstalled the doorbell camera, added a second one inside the hallway, pointing directly at my door. I even placed an old phone on the floor to record audio overnight, and still nothing. Every 2:47, the footage glitched. The hallway remained empty. The audio picked up a faint thump, sometimes static, nothing more. But my body knew. I started waking up naturally at 2:45, heart already racing, skin cold. Like my nerves had adjusted to the schedule before I had. Then came the night it changed. I didn't open the door immediately. I just sat, barely breathing, right next to it. When the knock came, I opened the door mid-knock, and he was there. A man, maybe late 50s, gray hair, glasses, wearing a zip-up hoodie like he was out for a walk. He stood less than a foot away from me, his fists still slightly raised. We locked eyes. He didn't flinch. He didn't explain. He just lowered his hand, slowly turned, and walked down the hall toward the elevator. No rush, no panic, like he'd done this before. I stepped out, trying to get his attention. "Hey!" He didn't stop. The elevator opened. He stepped inside. The doors closed. And that was it. I waited for the camera alert. Nothing. I checked the footage. Same static. But this time, I knew what I saw. I had a face. I had a person. The next day, I went to the building manager and asked about him. I gave the apartment number. I saw him walk past -301. The manager frowned. "That one?" he said. "No one's lived there in almost a year." I didn't know what to do with that information. Apartment 301 was supposed to be empty, but I saw him, felt the air shift when he was near, heard his knuckles tap my door like clockwork, night after night. The manager let me look at the lease records. The last tenant was named Harold Jensen, moved in 3 years ago, left after 10 months. Officially, the file said voluntary exit, no complaint, no legal issue. But when I asked why he left, the manager shrugged. Some people just disappear. He didn't mean it literally, but that's how it sounded. I searched online, social media. Nothing under that name locally. I found a few Harold Jensens in other states, but none matched the age or address, like he'd been scrubbed. I went to apartment 301 that afternoon. The door was locked. Dust gathered around the frame. The number plaque was slightly crooked, but the oddest part? The doormat. It was clean. No dust, no debris, no spider webs like every other unused unit on the floor. Someone had stepped on it recently, repeatedly. I stood there a long time before walking away. That night, I didn't wait. I stood right by the door at 2:45, lights off, camera in hand. Not to record, just to have something to hold. Something real. At 2:47, the knock came. Not loud, not soft, just inevitable. I didn't open the door. I whispered, "Why?" No reply, only silence. Then I saw it, beneath the doorframe. A shadow, movement, a set of fingers slowly reaching under. Not forceful, just curious. I stepped back. The fingers paused, curled once, then withdrew. I locked every bolt. The next morning, I checked the inside of my door. Smudges, fingerprints, low on the surface, like someone had pressed their hands flat against the bottom. And something else. A note, taped impossibly from the inside. Plain paper, black marker. It's not about being let in. It's about who knocks next. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared of the man outside, but because I felt something had shifted. The pattern had changed, and I wasn't sure anymore which side of the door I belonged to. The knock never came, not the next night, not the one after that. For over a week, I sat in silence at 2:47 a.m., staring at the door. Nothing. At first, it felt like a relief, but then the silence started to feel wrong. Not peaceful, empty, like something was missing. Like someone was supposed to be there, but wasn't. I told myself to be grateful. I told myself it was over, but I didn't believe it. I started checking the hallway every night, not just at 2:47, but earlier. Later, I even knocked once myself, gently, unsure if I was asking for something to return or daring it to. No one answered. And then, one night, I slept. Really slept, deep and dreamless. When I woke up, it was 4:12 a.m. The front door was open. Just a crack. Not enough to notice at a glance, but enough to feel the shift in the air. Enough to let something pass. I walked toward it slowly. There was no wind, no draft. The locks were still engaged. It had opened from the inside. On the floor was a piece of folded paper, my name written on it in thick black marker. Inside, 2 sentences. You opened it. Now it's your turn. I don't remember dropping it. I don't remember backing away. But suddenly, I was sitting on the kitchen floor, the hum of the fridge louder than anything else in the world. That day, I stayed in bed, didn't check the hallway, didn't call anyone. I left my door bolted, my windows closed. But I couldn't ignore the feeling of being pulled. That night, I didn't hear a knock, but I stood up at 2:47 anyway. I walked to my door and knocked 3 times. No thought, no hesitation, just instinct. And something knocked back. Not from the hallway, from the inside. The wall opposite me, the one that backed into the next apartment, answered. 3 soft taps. Perfect rhythm. Like it had always been there, waiting. Like the roles had changed. I moved out 2 weeks later, but I don't sleep through the night anymore. Because sometimes, at 2:47, I wake up with my hand mid-air, reaching toward a door that isn't there. Sometimes I hear someone knocking. And the worst part? Sometimes it's me. If you've ever gone through something similar, or know someone who has, leave a comment below. Sometimes just telling it is already a way to protect yourself. And if this video made you think twice before letting your guard down, then it was already worth it. Here, we don't tell stories to entertain. We tell them to warn. Because real fear doesn't jump scare you. It silences. It freezes. And if you want to keep hearing stories that might help keep you alive, subscribe. The next story could be yours.